Hello, fabulous friends and fans. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Welcome to this FAQ video. Thank you so much to all of you out there for interacting, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, my website, nadiyashah.com, and the YouTube comments as well. I'm so grateful for it. And this video is actually answering some follow-up questions to the Mars retrograde season special series of videos that I recently posted on online on my YouTube channel. So this is the Mars retrograde season of 2016, and Mars is moving in and out of the sign of Scorpio and Sag. So part of the time in Scorpio, part of the time in Sag, and of course I got into lots and lots of detail about this. I think it was like an hour video just looking at the symbolism of Mars, and particularly for the collective for this particular Mars retrograde season, so you can check that out. But I had a few excellent follow-up questions. So the first one comes from Anna, who connected with me through my website, the contact form on my website. Thank you so much for that. Asked about health. Is it going to speak to health? And Kay on Facebook asked about starting new projects or new relationships with Mars retrograde. Is it going to affect these matters? Is it advisable? So my answer to that is it depends. It depends where that Mars retrograde is falling in your particular chart. If you know your natal chart, your unique birth chart, you want to consider that. If you know your moon sign, you want to consider that. Most people do know their sun sign, so you can also look at it from a sun sign perspective. So basically, okay, essentially, the people who are going to experience Mars retrograde speaking to relationships, right, particularly partnerships, are the Geminis and the Taurians out there. And people who are going to experience this in terms of dating and romance are the Cancers and the Leos out there. Mars speaks to what you're attracted to, right? It's what turns you on, what you want to move towards. When you see the qualities of your Mars, so when you were born, you took your first breath. When you took that first breath and became connected to everyone and everything, there's the snapshot of the sky around you at the moment of that first breath. That's what the natal chart is. And so that chart includes all the major planets and more as well, depending on what astrologer you go to, what they like to emphasize. Mars is always there in the natal chart. And Mars is in a chart what attracts you, what turns you on. And so if you have, for example, if you have your Mars, and if you know your chart, you can see where your Mars was, what sign your Mars was in, what part of the sky, your sky that Mars was in. If you have Mars in an air sign, you're going to be you're going to find yourself drawn to people who are smart, or witty, or like to talk, right? It's the way to your heart is through your mind. If you are someone who is an earth sign, then ultimately it is that person who's established something of themselves, right? Who's either on the path or has achieved something that you can respect. But it's normally somebody who's doing something in the physical world that you can respect. But also I will say this, the earth signs are particularly sensual, particularly the Taurians, the Virgos. They have a certain sensitivity, so there's that element to it as well, just the experience itself of being with another person. The water signs, well, it depends on the water sign, but generally they like romance, they like feeling like they're the only one. They like being swept away in general. The Cancerians, a little different. They say, you know, the way to the heart is through the stomach. That tends to be more true for people with Mars in Cancer. They're going to be drawn to you more if they know you can cook really well, I gotta say. And then there is the fire signs. And the fire signs are very much about, it tends to be very like, if they feel it, right? It's that passionate attraction to another person. But really what I've found with the fire signs is they like confidence. Like it's the person who can really hold their own, that insists on being not just an equal, but you think about Leo, right? They want a queen. So that person who lays down the law and says, I am queen, you're going to treat me like that, tends to get their heart. And all the fire signs actually do like confidence. They like a show of confidence and a sense of self-possession, a sense of knowing yourself as well. That tends to draw them towards you even more. So these are some general things to understand about Mars in a chart. But having said that, the thing is that when Mars is retrograde, the theory is that what you are attracted to, like you'll see it differently, like what attracts you, what it is that appeals to you during a Mars retrograde season might change once Mars goes direct. That is possible if that Mars is retrograding in a romantic part of the sky. It is possible. But for the most part, I have found what tends to happen is that when a planet is retrograde, or even just in retrograde season, and you meet somebody new, regardless of what sign you are, when you meet somebody new, and Mercury's retrograde, or Venus is retrograde, Mars is retrograde, these are the main planets that you want to look at in terms of relationships, then the person ends up being different than you thought they were. And sometimes that can work to your advantage. They can end up being better. Sometimes not so much. It depends a lot on the other things that are taking place in your chart. That is a huge factor to consider as well. Now, do keep in mind, with this current Mars retrograde, we do have this happening. But for example, we're also having a series of trines between Jupiter and Pluto. So to have these trines happening between Jupiter and Pluto in earth signs, it is the earth signs and the water signs in general, the earth signs and the water signs, who are going to experience this energy supremely. Like it's just so lucky in terms of finding that right person, connecting with someone with whom you have a very strong bond. This is especially true for the Pisceans out there, possible for the Taurians out there as well. But I think particularly the water and earth people will benefit from this energy, romantically speaking. The fire signs, it's more related to work. And for the air signs, it's a little bit more personal, more what's happening on energetic levels. And then there's some other applications as well in terms of resources, in terms of self-care, in terms of personal change, personal realization, all of that. But it's unique to each person. Unique to each sign, I should say. I would advise you to watch the Jupiter special horoscopes. Having said that, there's something to be said for not always having all the answers right away. There's something about the surprise of things that tends to work in our favor sometimes. So starting new projects, again, it depends on the nature of the project, what kind of project it is. Does it involve other people or not? The thing is that there is a planet retrograde, or at least in shadow retrograde, almost always, pretty much. You'll have these brief windows of time here and there. Sometimes, like over the course of a year, you might have 1 week or 2 weeks where all planets are direct. But some planets will still be in shadow. That's the thing. So it's never always going to be exactly perfect for whatever it is that you desire to start, whatever it is that you desire to do. But you can utilize the energy and how it is to your advantage. So depending on what kind of project you're starting, that's going to speak to this and how you're approaching it. So for example, let's say Mars is retrograde in your 6th house. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're a Cancer and you're going to have Mars retrograde, again, for students of astrology out there. Your 5th and 6th houses is where you're going to experience this Mars retrograde. With this, let's say you want to start something new. You want to start a new fitness program. Okay, let's say that's part of it. Or a new job. Okay, this is all very 6th house oriented stuff. Well, the retrograde can make you aware of where there has been resistance, where it is that you're ready to reconsider your action plan, and also help you to look a little bit more deeply into your own motivation. but also to be more effective as well. It's a good placement to be more effective. It's better to have, like, for example, now all else being equal, right? You want other supportive things happening as well. I think that with Mars retrograde, let's say you're ready to start a new fitness plan, Mars going retrograde could be the motivation you need. Now that means when Mars goes direct, you might change that plan a little bit, but that can be okay. If Mars is retrograde in your third house, okay, so let's say that you are a Libra. So you are, you're a Libra or a Virgo. You're a Virgo or a Libra. So you're going to have Mars moving in and out this year of your house of writing, and you want to write a book. Well, this can be that, you know, that sense of contemplation that you need in order to get started, in order to formulate your ideas. A lot of writers have Mercury retrograde for this very reason, because it allows you to be reflective. It allows you to consider your ideas and to really mull over words. And that Mars going retrograde in a part of the sky that has to do with your thinking processes, that has to do with words and writing, could be just the kick that you need to get going, to get started. I personally have found Mars retrograde season very empowering, and I think a lot depends on how Mars is in your chart. If you have Mars, particularly in one of the quieter houses, what's called the psychic houses of the chart, the 12th, the 4th, or the 8th, these particular houses, they tend to do very well with Mars retrograde if you have Mars retrograde in your natal chart as well. Because it tends to be a time when you're clearer about the intention behind your action, and you're clearer about the value of your energy. So you want to dedicate it and focus it on what really matters. You get clearer on that, like what really matters, what's really happening here. And also Mars retrograde can make a person more strategic. So if you know that there's a project that you have to start, or you want to start, or you've been meaning to do a little bit more work on, this can be a really great time to have a plan and stick to it towards manifestation. Even if you have to work out some things once Mars goes direct, you can still gain a whole lot of ground having Mars retrograde. It's about how you use it. Also, I would say for people who are in like medical professions, spiritually related professions, that's a really broad umbrella, however you understand that. Either one of these also, I have noticed, do well with Mars retrograde, because you're reflecting a little bit more. You're more strategic in how it is that you're approaching the work that you do to ensure that it is effective on a very deep level. So it is about what kind of activity that you're using, and also the nature of your birth Mars, how already your relationship is to your Mars. If you have a Mars that is what we call afflicted, I'm not crazy about that word, but let's say you have a Mars in your chart that is having challenging conversations with other planets in the sky at the moment of your birth, then Mars retrograde, all else being equal, as long as that Mars retrograde isn't, you know, triggering a lot of those difficult conversations, Mars retrograde can be just what you need to tap into the power of that energy. To understand how to use your Mars that much better to your advantage. And with starting a relationship, the physical part of the relationship might also go through a change as well. So you just have to be aware of that. And I have actually seen it go, the one example that I know of a friend that I know of, whose chart I'm familiar with that I know, met somebody, didn't really feel it, wasn't feeling it at all. And then when things moved to the physical realm and Mars went direct, felt it. This was it for them. Like, they knew it, because that Mars retrograde helped them to understand more deeply what it is that they want. Maybe represented a little bit of that resistance of holding back. But then once they thought, okay, let's go forward with this, let's give this a chance. Once they actually kissed that person with Mars standing still and going forward, you know, that was it. It ended up being a 2-year relationship. So I've seen things like that take place as well. Where it comes to health, I've mentioned that a little bit already. If it's in a health part of the sky, it can. Mars is also energy and vitality, right? It's the energy that sort of gets you out of bed and gets you running. When I think of Mars, I think of the runner. I think of someone outside, sweating, feeling healthy, alive, and vital. That's what Mars represents, as well as one image of Mars, one archetype of Mars. The athlete is Mars. And so where it comes to feeling a sense of physical energy, Mars retrograde can help us to get clear as to where we are in terms of our vitality and how it is that we can feel better, what we can resolve more deeply to feel better. So Mars retrograde, if there are any kind of nagging health issues, where it comes to the physical body, because Mars is a very physically oriented planet. Where it comes to the physical body, Mars can be really good to help us, Mars retrograde in particular, to find that right workout for us, you know, to tap into our inner athlete. What's the sport going to be? Just like the inner musician. If you're a musician, it's like you experiment to find your instrument. I know this. My brother's a musician. He's a drummer. And, you know, it's said, his friends have said, like the moment you sat down in front of those drums, you found your instrument. And I remember being a kid and watching him go through all these different instruments on the pathway towards finding his instrument. It's kind of like that when you are being inspired to move your body, to be more physical, to consider your physical being, to consider the fact that you are embodied, that there's wisdom in the physicalness of your embodiment. There is something to be said for finding your right sport or your right activity, your right endeavor. And during Mars retrograde, you know, sometimes it's just getting started. That is the biggest challenge, and Mars retrograde can help do that. Sometimes people work out plans, they realize that something needs to change, and they attract the right information, the right sport, the right knowledge to actually make those changes. And I have definitely seen that as well. People dramatically change their workouts. They're sort of in a bit of a rut. They've worked out regularly. Maybe they've experienced some changes, but they feel themselves in a rut. They feel like change isn't happening anymore. They'll do something dramatically different, change up their routines, their health routines, their particularly exercise routines. They'll change up their exercise routines, and then they start to experience change. That becomes very dramatic, especially as Mars stands still and begins to go direct. If Mars is in a part of the sky for you that is about health habits, you'll experience Mars related to your health differently, more in terms of your habits, your workout plan. If Mars is in your sign, the case for this year in Scorpio or Sagittarius, there's a drive to change. There's a connection to your own body you're going to be feeling that is going to inspire you to move, that can end up benefiting you and empowering you in many areas of life, including your health. Mars in the 8th house. So if you are, you'll experience Mars in the 8th house. Right now Mars with Scorpio, so if you are an Aries, or you are a Taurus, you will have Mars sort of moving back and forth in your 8th house. The 8th house has to do with surgery. I got a little technical there. I hope that's okay for students of astrology out there. It has to do with surgery. I'm not crazy about surgery during a Mars retrograde, only because it's moving around so much, and particularly if that Mars is speaking to Pluto in your chart, or even the Sun in your chart, maybe Saturn in the chart, I'm going to be more cautious with that. And so I'll give you an example. I remember years ago, in the very early years of my practice, when I was, doing readings for people at my kitchen table in downtown Toronto, and I remember somebody came and she really wanted to have a particular elective surgery, a weight loss surgery. And I looked at the fact that she was going to have Mars moving over her Pluto, and both Mars and Pluto ruled the 4th house, the stomach, right, which is connections to the stomach, squaring the ascendant, which is the appearance, And she had some interesting things happening with Neptune as well in her ascendant also. So I remember looking at that. Neptune was moving over her ascendant. And I looked at that and I strongly advised her to wait, to not do this surgery. I said, at best, it's not going to be what you think. Very possible that it'll be more than one. They'll have to go back and make some corrections. Very possible as well. Worst case scenario, there can be some serious complications here. She ended up, going ahead and doing it anyways. That's fine. And she came back to me like over a year later and she said, you were right, I did have to go back. There were complications. And I thought that she was lucky actually, because when you have a sky like that, especially doing anything, operations, elective surgery with the stomach. Now, if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice, right? You work with the energy that you're given and you utilize it to the best of your advantage. But when you do have a choice and you can see that there's some tendency here, and she was investing a lot of money into this surgery, and it was a lot of money for her in particular. It was elective. When you have a situation like that, ideally you want a strong Mars. You want a Mars that is supportive, that has lots of harmonious support to it as well. You want a Mars maybe where Jupiter is making a harmonious aspect to it. So you want Jupiter to be well placed. You want that Mars to be well placed. So these are a few things you want to watch, particularly where it comes to the body and changes to the body. Anything that involves cutting, I would, if it's elective, try to avoid. If you can't avoid it, you can't. It is what it is. If you are doing anything particularly involving the face as part of it, and also more parts of the body that have to do with elimination, these are all covered by Mars as well as a general rule. There's nothing like actually knowing your chart and being able to ascertain the best choices for you in that regard, or at least to have that mirror to get that other perspective. But whether or not you're a student of astrology or an astrologer, whether or not whatever your feelings may be, the great thing is that when a planet goes retro, it'll also go direct. You'll get to look at things again. You'll get to reconsider. And there are very, very few times, in my opinion, in my experience, there are very, very few things in life that can't be taken, that can't be changed. And what I mean by that is you can always change your mind. You can go down a certain path, you can try something, you can experiment, but then as soon as you know better, you can do something different and know that it'll be okay. And so as long as you're not doing anything like too drastic, right? Like eye surgery, brain surgery, unless you can't help it, it may be the case. Actually, depending on where, again, other support. Mars is sort of the brain, the muscular structure, the skull in particular. If that Mars is well placed, doing amazing things with planets or placements, the ruler of the 8th house, the ruler of the 1st house, if there's a strong, positive Jupiter as well happening at the same time, and that Mars retrograde, especially if it's something that's long overdue, a surgery long overdue to these particular areas of the body, it can come up rather quickly. It can be resolved quickly as well, or it can be needing to go back and do a few extra things. So again, there's no absolutes. There is sort of ascertaining the best choices forward, and what the best choice is going to be determined by more than just one thing, more than just one isolated movement of Mars going retro. Again, I have seen people just because of a retrograde planet, great things come about because of that retrograde planet. And because of that retrograde planet, they had people and efforts involved that were extra careful, that were extra thorough. That is part of what a retrograde can also grant you. But to be on the safe side, it's always better to have a direct Mars, I think, and all that good stuff before you do anything like really major serious. Mars retrograde, like I said, it can be a great time. It can be a really great time if it gets you honest about how you're using your energy, how you're wasting your energy in particular, and the value of your energy. Because when you appreciate that your time is valuable, This is something I remember, you know, and I'll wrap up with this. I remember one book that I've read. It comes up again and again over the years. It was a huge bestseller back in the day. It was called The Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck. And this book made a huge impact on me. And again, I've read it at different times in my life. I always get something different out of it. And in this book, he says, among a lot of things, he says that a person who values themselves, values their time, they respect their time, they know that their time is precious. So when you know that you are precious, when you know that you are valuable, then you use your time wisely, more wisely. You don't procrastinate as much. You get to the stuff that is maybe you're resisting or is more challenging, but you know is valuable for you to do. You get to that first before you go right to the lighter parts of life. And someone, like, to look at how someone procrastinates, it is one reflection. It's no absolutes, right? But it's one reflection of where this person could value themselves more, where the work is for this person on a deeper level, so that that inner work starts to be reflected in how they're using their time. And I think that's part of what Mars retrograde teaches us, is it teaches us this is your energy. Reflect on your energy. Get in touch with your energy, your life, your vitality, your breath. Realize what matters. And then do it from that place of self-knowledge. Take wise action, valuing your energy from a place of self-knowledge. With that, great things, great actions, and great results become possible. I will stop there. Thank you so much again, everybody, and your interactions. I absolutely love them. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. Of course, please like, comment, subscribe, share, thumbs up. I'm truly grateful for it. It'll be a great Mars retro season. Until we connect again, take care.